So let's cultivate our motivation. And it's very important to continuously remember our good fortune, especially the good fortune that having this precious human life affords us. And knowing that not every human life is a precious human life. In addition to being human, we need certain other conditions, like being interested in the Dharma, living in a place where we can meet teachers and learn the Dharma, having our senses in good tact, all kinds of conditions like this. And to know that we have those conditions, and then to remember all the wonderful things that we can do with this precious human life. How we can really make some significant progress on the path to liberation and enlightenment, prepare for our next rebirth, do much good for others even in this life. And if we remember this continuously, then every day when we wake up, we feel so happy. And there's a sense of confidence that comes in our mind, because we have the conditions to learn and grow and integrate the Dharma in our hearts and minds. So it's important to remember that and let that uplift our mood, so that when we greet life, when we greet the other living beings around us, we can greet them with a smile, greet them with the wish for them to be happy and be free of suffering. And of course, so that we can greet our life with the bodhicitta motivation, knowing that that's the real purpose and meaning and long-term goal of our lives. And feel so much delight and joy that we have met the Dharma and know that we can do this. And so, listening to the teachings, discussing this morning, all of those are activities we do with the bodhicitta motivation for the benefit of all beings. So, we should have a very happy mind, because there's so many reasons to have a happy mind. One trick that our self-centered mind plays on us is it looks at every small thing that isn't going the way we want it to and complains. Okay? So it's the whole thing of, there's the whole wall is pink and there's one green dot on it and we focus on the green dot. Yeah. Or the whole wall, all the bricks are in line on the whole wall except one brick, and we focus on the brick that isn't in line. Or maybe better yet, the whole side of the house is stained, but one little corner the size of a nickel got missed, and we focus on that. So that's kind of what we do in our life. When we have a precious human life, we focus on some small things that, are really skewed. And in that way, criticize ourselves, trash ourselves, have a pity party, get depressed. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, we all do this, don't we? So, the meditation on the precious human life is so important because it makes us see the conventional reality of our situation, and that it's not this, catastrophic thing that we often make it out to be. That we're incredibly, amazingly fortunate, And just even when you compare the number of non-human beings to human beings on this planet. I mean, even here living at the Abbey, how many human beings are we? Not quite 20. How many ants, bees, grasshoppers, hornets, wasps are there? And that we're not even talking about, the deer and the big animals. But, compared to the human beings, I mean, the insect population is enormous. So just having a human rebirth is very difficult, numerical-wise. We're very fortunate to have that human rebirth. But then, like I was saying, not every human rebirth is a precious human rebirth. Because there's, we have, almost 7 billion human beings now? But how many of them are interested in genuine, sincere spiritual practice? Yeah? When we look at our families, just start out with our families. How many of our families are really sincerely engaged in genuine spiritual practice and have that interest? And how many of our family members are basically seeking the happiness of this life, and that's it. They don't think beyond this life. And those are the people that we know really well, that we care about. And how about all of our old friends? All of our old friends that we shared so many good discussions with. And then how many of them are interested in spiritual matters? All of our classmates from school. I mean, here we're just talking one quality of a precious human life. Just having the interest. You can see that it's so rare and difficult for people to have, a really sincere interest in practicing a spiritual path. So the fact that we have that interest is really something to honor and respect inside of ourselves, and in each other. Not to be arrogant over. There's no reason to be arrogant. But to say, wow, I am so fortunate. And whoever I was in many past lives worked very hard to get me to where I am right now. One of the inmates I work with in prison wrote that one time. I mean, this is a guy in prison for life. And he wrote and he said, my previous lives worked very hard to get me this precious human life. And I don't want to blow it for them. And here we are, we're not in prison. So we have even more freedom. I mean, he's in prison, so much difficulty in getting teachings and practicing. And yet having this awareness of, his fortune in having a precious human life. So it's something we really need to think about, and appreciate and take care of our life. And like I said, not get arrogant, but, really feel the fortune and feel very joyful about this fortune and make a determination not to waste it. So they always use the example in the teachings of somebody who's realized precious human life as a beggar finding a jewel in the garbage. that analogy may or may not, do anything for us. But imagine having a credit card in somebody else's name with no limit. Yeah. Like, oh wow, I can get anything and everything I want. Well, that's kind of, what we want to feel about our precious human life. I'm hoping that analogy works for you. I hate shopping. So a credit card doesn't do it for me, but most people like shopping. So, yeah. But to really think about this and look at our lives in a balanced way so that we aren't always looking at, oh, I lack this condition and I lack that condition, and this person has it better than me and that person has it better than me, and I'm inadequate, and, oh, I've done so many awful things, and, how am I ever going to get enlightened? Maybe I just better have a beer and forget it all. Yeah, instead of doing that kind of single-pointed meditation, which is basically just hallucinated garbage, to look accurately at the wonderful situation we have and use it. What do you think? You agree? Or do you still think you're a loser?
I think not to believe your own thoughts.
Yeah.
They're just ripples.
Yeah. Yeah. All the
Crushing them down. You just keep, I don't know, not crushing them down, but just keep seeing them for what they are. And looking at them, not let them derail you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because, we have a habit with those negative thoughts, but to recognize them for what they are and not buy into what they're saying. And then they come and they go. They're impermanent after all, aren't they? Yeah. So they come, they go, they don't derail us. Because we know where we're going.
I think the thing that was brought up yesterday is like, well, I think it was yesterday was saying, well, will this work? And it's like you can't just turn those thoughts off immediately. And so it's not like, yeah, it does work, but it doesn't work in the quick, easy way that we're used to things working. And so that's, I think, helpful to realize. That
Yes.
You're not wasting your time when you're not buying into them, even though they're still overpowering your mind. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Eventually it changes.
Yeah. Well, our Dharma practice is working with these thoughts. It's not that first we have to get rid of these thoughts and then we practice the Dharma. Mm-hmm. Okay? Transforming our mind from the hallucinated states that they get into right now, that's the Dharma practice. Yeah. So if you're expecting, wild, fancy experiences immediately, good luck. Take some acid, that's better, faster. And I don't recommend that. Yeah. But, if you really want to work with your mind, then you see, you can change it day by day. And every time you counteract one of those thoughts that says, oh, every time you counteract that thought, your practice, that's the real Dharma practice. Yeah, and you're getting there. So when you do that, you should pat yourself on the back. Instead of saying, oh, I don't have samadhi, woe is me. Well, we counteracted one negative thought. That's great. Because if we didn't counteract that one negative thought, we know where that one thought can take us. if we let it sit in our mind, don't we? And it's not good where that one thought takes us, you know? So really give ourselves some credit. Yeah, we have to differentiate arrogance and rejoicing at our own virtue. They're very different. Yeah, arrogance is getting puffed up where there's nothing. Yeah. Arrogance is just hot air, making something up to try and make ourselves feel good or create an image for other people. But when we've created some virtue, we rejoice at it. Wow, there's some virtue in this world. That's good. I happen to be the one that did it. There's lots of other people creating virtue today too, and I really rejoice at all of that. Okay? So we don't discount our own virtue. Yeah, the line in the seven limb prayer doesn't say, I rejoice in all the virtue and merit of everybody else except me. It says, I rejoice in the virtues of all sentient beings. That includes ourselves. You know, so to give ourselves some credit. Really, really important. Okay? So, you know, when we practice the Dharma, we learn to become like a doctor to our own mind and see what we need at any particular time. And the more you practice, the more skill you get, you know, as with anything, and you know how to become a doctor to your own mind. So you know if your mind goes to this extreme, to practice that, and if your mind goes to that extreme, to think about this. You know, and you bring yourself into balance. Mm-hmm.
That was one thing that really helped me, is that when I was in the middle of my internal conflict, that I began every day every night before going to bed, to be thankful that, okay, this is one more day that I kept my precepts, this is one more day that I gave my precepts. It really added that little extra thing, because I was trying to look for anything that could help me be strong.
Yeah.
I found that very helpful. It's okay, one more day, that's all I ask, is one more day, and that helped tremendously.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing, isn't it? To go to bed at night and say, oh, I kept my precepts for one more day. That much purification got done, that much merit got created for one more day. That's fantastic. Yeah. And, you know, your experience, you saw it works. It helps you see the good that you're doing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is important to learn how to do. Because then we can be happy Dharma practitioners. Who wants to be an unhappy Dharma practitioner? Oh, Dharma's such a burden. I have 100,000 mantra to recite, and I just found out it's 111,000 because I have to do 10% extra. Oh. Let's not think like that. Okay, let's go back to the Buddha's life, okay? So we were saying that, you know, that he did all this ascetic practice, and then he left behind the ascetic practice, and he started doing concentration practice instead, and realized that the bliss that was coming from that was a very pure kind of bliss. But he also realized that it wasn't sufficient for completing the path. Okay, and so he finds the middle way. So this is a portion from the Samyutta Nikaya, and the Buddha says, there are these two extremes that are not to be indulged in by one who has gone forth. Gone forth means become a monastic. In fact, that's what the Pravaja ceremony, when you take your novice precepts, the translation of that is going forth. You are going forth from home life to homeless life. Okay? So these two extremes that are not to be indulged in by one who has gone forth. Which two? Okay, that which is devoted to sensual pleasure with reference to sensual objects, base, vulgar, common, ignoble, unprofitable. Okay, so self-indulgent sense pleasure. And the second one, that which is devoted to self-affliction, painful, ignoble, unprofitable. Okay, so extreme ascetic practices, thinking that by torturing your body you'll change your mind. We don't always get into that kind of thing, but I think how we beat ourselves up emotionally is somewhat along that line of, and especially guilt. If I feel guilty enough, then I'll purify whatever wrong I did. That's kind of like a mental ascetic practice of self-torture, isn't it? Okay. Avoiding both of these extremes, the middle way realized by the Tathagata, producing vision, producing knowledge, leads to calm, to direct knowledge, to self-awakening, to unbinding from samsara. And what is the middle way realized by the Tathagata? That producing vision, producing knowledge, leads to calm, to direct knowledge, to self-awakening, to unbinding. Precisely this noble eightfold path. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is the middle way realized by the Tathagata, that producing vision, producing knowledge, leads to calm, to direct knowledge, to self-awakening, to unbinding. Okay? So he's saying that the path of self-indulgence and sensual pleasure, just, the pleasure of this life, what we're all taught, because that's all our family knows, is the pleasure of this life. That's all society knows. So that self-indulgent sense pleasure on one extreme, the self-critical asceticism that tortures the body, and tortures the mind, then neither of those is the path. Neither of those work to eliminate the afflictions and to eliminate suffering in the long run. So what works is the Noble Eightfold Path. And so therefore the Buddha teaches that. So just to go through that very, very briefly, actually there's a lot to say, is the first one is right view. And so at the beginning of the path, we need the right view of conventional truth. That is the understanding of the law of karma and its effects. Yeah, because we start our practice out based on some understanding, some conviction of causality. And that our actions have an ethical dimension, and that our actions create the causes for what we experience. So that's the right view at the beginning of the path. Then there's right intention, so at least to have the intention for a good rebirth, but hopefully more than that, the intention for liberation, and even more than that, from a Mahayana perspective, the intention for full enlightenment. And so to then live our life with non-harmfulness, ahimsa, what Gandhi taught, non-violence. But it doesn't mean just physical violence. It's like non-harmfulness, even harming others with our bodies, not only with our body, but also with our speech and our mind. And living with benevolence, kind attitude, kindness. Yeah. Okay, and so that's right intention, and then right speech. So abandoning lying and talking about other people behind their back so as to create disharmony, harsh speech, idle talk. That's right, okay. And then right action, so to abandon harming others physically, especially killing them, to abandon taking their stuff, taking what hasn't been freely given, and to abandon unwise and unkind sexual behavior. And then right livelihood, so to make our livelihood in a way that does not cause harm to anybody else. Okay, so to make it legal and in a profession that doesn't cause harm, that doesn't cause damage. Okay, then right effort. So take the mind that takes delight in virtue, that takes delight in practice. And right mindfulness. So on one hand, holding our precepts in mind. On the other hand, holding our object of meditation firmly so we don't get distracted. And then right concentration, being able to focus the mind deeply in our meditation. And then we circle around again to the first one, to right view. But this time right view means right view of the ultimate nature. Okay, so of the emptiness of inherent existence of all things. So that's just very briefly the Noble Eightfold Path. Yeah, but to live our life in that way, on a moment-to-moment basis, you know, which I think is one of the really beautiful things about the Dharma, is that we practice it wherever we are. You don't have to be in a special building. You don't have to wear special clothes. You don't have to have a special hairdo or lack of a hairdo. You don't have to have, malas and all sorts of physical accoutrements. You don't even need a meditation cushion. All you need is your mind. And we always have our mind, don't we? So that means wherever we are, whatever we're going through, there's the possibility of practicing the Dharma. And so that's something that's really beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, it's always there. And the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha as our refuge is always there. We just need to turn our mind in that direction. Okay? And then practice the Noble Eightfold Path. It's right there. Okay, so then the Buddha continued on, and he, crossed the river, which is symbolic, of course, and went and sat under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya. How many of you have been to Bodh Gaya? Yeah. It's quite amazing to sit under that tree and to be at the stupa and to feel the aspirations of so many people for so many centuries in so many different languages. Yeah, it's really quite something. So I hope we can all go there together. Of course, that's the external pilgrimage. Yeah, when Rinchungpa, Milarepa's disciple, wanted to go on pilgrimage to Bodh Gaya, Milarepa reprimanded him and he said, the real pilgrimage is inside your body. Yeah. You find the holy places in your body. In other words, actualize the subtlest clear light mind. And then you don't need external pilgrimage. But those of us who can't do that, we can start out with the external pilgrimage and get some faith and inspiration and drink some tea. Now really at Bodh Gaya, the precious human life always stands out to me so strongly because there's all these Indians who come there, some of them come to beg and they really need, they're lepers and all sorts of crippled people. But no, they're sitting outside the stupa, no faith. Other Indians who come there to sell all sorts of Buddhist trinkets and things like that. No faith. Yeah. People selling tea at the tea stalls and the veggie-wallas and all these other people. Embo Gaya. I mean, the holiest place on the planet. No faith. Yeah. So it really kind of makes you see that even you go to the stupa and with a little bit of faith offer one candle, it's quite something. Yeah. So he went there and he sat under the Bodhi tree. Maybe at the Abbey we're sitting under walnut trees and grand firs and Doug firs and ponderosa pines and tamaracks and he sat down to practice. And as the story goes, when he's practicing, Mara, his old buddy, comes to say hello and to distract him. And so what this is referring to is the distractions that we have in our own mind. So I can't remember the order this happened. I think was it the first one, the weapons? Yeah, I think so. That Mara first came with all of his armies. Okay? So Al-Qaeda, the Iraqi insurgents, who else? The Libyan army, Assad's troops, they all come. The whole world military is there. What it's symbolizing is our own anger. Our own anger. Yeah. Shantideva talks a lot about this, and he says, an external enemy, the worst an external enemy can do is take our life. That's the worst. But an external enemy cannot send us to a lower rebirth. Yeah. What sends us to a lower rebirth? Our own afflictions, our own polluted karma. That's what really kills us and assaults us and damages us. So Shantideva says, external enemies, they're going to die anyway. You don't really need to make such a big deal about them. But internal enemies are not going to die anyway. Our self-centered thought, our anger, our attachment, our ignorance, they're not going to go away unless we really do something about them. Those are the real enemies. Okay? So, in this case, the enemy showed up in the form of, weapons and armies attacking the Buddha when he's meditating. And basically, like I said, what this is standing for is anger. So it's like when we're sitting in our meditation and our mind explodes with anger. Have you ever had that happen? Who's had that happen? I've had that happen. You're sitting there and then you remember something that happened and the mind just gets infuriated. So incredibly angry. Yeah, horribly angry, burning with anger. Yeah, at remembering something that happened. Awful, isn't it? And nothing's there. That's always the shocking. When I first discovered that in my meditation, because for a long time, I would just get angry and angry and angry and angry. And then one day I realized, that person's not here. I'm sitting in a room alone. That person's not here. That thing isn't happening. And my mind's just like, okay, so, you see the Buddha's experience is very much like ours. Yeah. Yeah.
I know you have said it, but like my mind goes like, this is solid and it will never go away. And it's so like, I'm overwhelmed by that.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. When I was in that mental state too, totally overwhelmed, totally bought into the story, could not free my mind from the story. It is real, it is permanent, this person damaged me and harmed me, I have every right in the world to be angry, any normal person would be furious. I had all the reasons behind me.
How do you let that go? It's like that green spot on that pink wall. Like,
Yeah, you're just single point on the green spot. You look, you step back and you go, oh, look at the pink wall.
so how do you to get out of it? It's just to remind myself, okay, nothing is solid, it will pass and come back.
It's like what Venerable Tarpa said. You know, you realize this is just a thought, it's impermanent, and I don't believe it. You know, one part of me is hooked into it, but another part of me, a wisdom part of me, knows that this is nonsense. And so you keep doing this again and again and again and again.
And you taught the thing about, which I find always helpful, is but why am I angry? You know, because you have that whole scene coming up, right? And then you just, you know, that was so helpful.
Yeah.
I just did it last night. This morning, like, but why are you angry? You know, like the whole thing happened, but why are you angry? And then you have to sit there with that question, why am I angry?
Yeah.
It's so helpful.
You didn't do what I wanted it.
Yeah, right. So you have this inner dialogue. You didn't do what I wanted you to do, therefore I have every right to be angry. And then you say, oh yeah, that's true, they didn't do what you wanted them to do. But why are you angry?
Yeah.
Just because somebody didn't do what you wanted them to do, why do you need to be angry about it? Because they did rah, 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 rah. Okay, they did that, but why are you angry? And you keep, you know, whatever your mind says, you acknowledge it. You don't refute it. You acknowledge, yes, they said that. Yes, the situation was unfair. Yes, they trashed me behind somebody else's back. Yes, they betrayed my trust. But why am I angry?
That's a good point.
It's good, isn't it?
Very good.
Yeah. Just because they did all
So
of
I'm
this.
responsible for all of that? No, wait!
Yeah. Yeah. They may have done all that. But why do I need to be angry about it? I can't control it. Okay? So the Buddha practiced the meditation on love, you know, and on kindness as an antidote to Mara's troops. And all the weapons turned into flowers and showered down on him. I think that's such a beautiful image, isn't it? You know, the weapon, I guess in the Bible they turned into plowshares or something. Isn't there some... Huh?
Swords into plowshares.
Yeah, swords into plowshares. Yeah, so you've got to get to work if there's plowshares. Buddhist, you just enjoy this rain of flowers. Isn't that a beautiful image? You're sitting there and flowers are raining. Yeah, how beautiful. Okay, and then he kept meditating, and then Mara appeared as all these beautiful women. Yeah. So whoever it is, you're attracted to that person in not even duplicate, but billionth, you know, kind of billions of beautiful, attractive, sexy people. What you've always wanted and more. okay? Completely everything you've wanted, you know. And so there's the Buddha trying to meditate, and all this is going on. Isn't that an incredible image? You know, when your mind is just overwhelmed by attachment and carried away with whatever, you know, we're attached to, using the sexual image here because it's the most powerful one. But it could be your attachment to money or recognition or whatever it is you're attached to. Okay. And how the mind just gets overwhelmed with attachment, doesn't it? What happens when your mind's overwhelmed with attachment? Goodbye reality. It's true, isn't it? Our attachment creates all these fantasies, these romantic dreams and images and expectations. And, you know, we just, we go off in our fantasy dreamland of how wonderful it's going to be and live happily ever after, and this person's going to fulfill all my needs, and or whatever you're attached to. You know, this job promotion is really going to clinch it and make me feel like a valuable human being, and you know, and we just get overwhelmed by attachment. And that's why I said reality goes out the door, because attachment just embellishes everything and paints a picture on something so that we believe it to be something that it's not. And then that's a big setup for disappointment. Yeah. We look in our lives, a lot of the times when we're disappointed and dissatisfied, it's because we had really unrealistic expectations to start with. So, yeah, so Buddha keeps meditating, yeah, and he sees that all these people are impermanent, and that their bodies are all made of junk, basically. And all of our bodies are made of junk, aren't they? Yeah. As Shantideva says, they're basically pee and poo factories. True? Yeah. Pee, poo, vomit, earwax, eye stuff, snot. This is what comes out of our body, sweat. It's not like things go in the body and then all this magnificent, beautiful stuff comes out of our body. It's not like our body radiates flowers and light and fragrant smells. Is it? What does our body radiate? No. Pee and poo and sweat and snot and vomit, earwax and eye stuff. It's, you know, the whole thing. Spit. It's true, isn't it? It's true. Yeah. No matter how beautiful the skin is, or how nice the hair is, or the eyes, or whatever, it's just the reality of the body. So it's not only the reality of the body of whoever we're sexually attracted to, it's the reality of our own body too. So what are we doing being so attached to this thing? Yeah. So the Buddha meditated like that, and then all these beautiful, sexy women turned into old hags and slunk away. But you know, when you look at it, I mean, think of the person that you're just so enamored with. Then imagine what that person's going to look like when they're 80 years old. Are they going to look the same? Are they going to be so attractive when they're 80 years old? Are they? Yeah. after my mom died a few years ago, my dad looked up one woman that he had dated before he met my mom. Okay, so he and my mom were married like 61 years or something. So this was like, he hadn't seen this person in like 60-something years. So he looked her up, because his high school sent out a little flyer about where everybody was. And then her son was coming down to Southern California, and so she came with him. And they came to visit my dad. And so my dad, in telling me about it, said, well, it's really good to see her again, but she's an old lady. And he was so surprised that she was an old lady. Because he still had in mind this image of this beautiful young woman that he knew, that he dated. You know? And she didn't look anything like that. But this is how our mind works, isn't it? Yeah? So it's very good to think like this. It calms the mind down. It settles the mind down so we don't go off on these extravaganzas. Okay, so they all went away. Then the Buddha got down to some real meditation. Okay? And he, not only did he realize, the emptiness of all phenomena, self and all phenomena, but he came to know the three knowledges. Okay, and you can see how these three knowledges lead up to the realization of emptiness. So he says, sitting under the Bodhi tree, so this is reflecting afterwards about his experience. When the mind was thus concentrated, purified, bright, unblemished, rid of defilement, pliant, malleable, steady, and attained to imperturbability, I directed it to the knowledge of recollecting my past lives. I recollected my manifold past lives, that is, 1 birth, 2 births, 5, 10, 50, 100, 1,000, 100,000, many eons of cosmic contraction, many eons of cosmic expansion, many eons of cosmic contraction and expansion. So all the rebirths in that length of time, thinking there, and this all came to him, very clearly. There I had such a name, I belonged to such a clan, had such an appearance. Such was my food, such my experience of pain and pleasure, such the end of my life. Passing away from that state, I re-arose there. There too I had such a name, belonged to such a clan, had such an appearance. Such was my food, such my experience of pain and pleasure, such the end of my life. Passing away from that state, I re-arose here. Thus I remembered my manifold past lives in their modes and details. Okay. So billions of eons of past lives being reborn in all the different realms of samsara, knowing exactly who he was, what his name was, what his experiences of pain and pleasure were. Okay. How do you think you would react if you had that clear vision of everything you had been born as for eons, and everything you had experienced, everything you had done?
Tired.
Tired?
Tired.
Hmm?
Freaked.
Freaked.
Equanimous, because you've seen how you've been so many different things. You really level everything out.
Yeah, so quite a leveling thing. Yeah.
So it's like, he's already done everything and been everything and explored everything, so why hang on anymore? I mean, all the things you wanted to do, you've done, and didn't get you anywhere, and you've suffered, being happy, being married, divorce, all the storyline, and here you are. So why hang on to that?
Yeah. Yeah. So you see, you've been everything, done everything, had everything, and you're tired. You're exhausted. And, I mean, you've seen that you've had all the pleasures and everything, and it hasn't gotten you anywhere. And you've also seen all the negative karma you've created, which would be pretty freaky, wouldn't it? I mean, to really look back at our past lives and own what we've done, and to see very clearly the harm that we created, and what we did under the influence of ignorance. I think that would just be terrifying and quite freaky. And so, if you had that, and that experience with the Dharma mind, where's it going to take you?
You want liberation.
You want liberation, don't you? Yeah. It's like, I want liberation. I've had enough of this. Yeah. There's a way in Italian, the way they say basta finito. It's like, yeah. Or maybe the way, did your mother ever say that? Enough already! And you knew, okay, this was, I better shut up. So it's like saying that to yourself, I've had all of this. I've done all my trips. Enough. Finished. Over. Done. Okay, so such a strong experience of renunciation and the determination to be free. Okay, then so he says, this was the first knowledge I attained in the first watch of the night. Ignorance was destroyed, knowledge arose. Darkness was destroyed, light arose, as happens in one who is heedful, ardent, and resolute. But the pleasant feeling that arose in this way did not invade my mind or remain. So, although, you might wonder, what does he mean, pleasant feeling? He just had this experience of seeing all of his past lives. How is that a pleasant feeling? I think here, what it's talking about is when we really make that firm decision that we're done with samsara, the mind gets very calm. Yeah, it gets very calm. Because all the things that usually bug us and disturb us are gone. We just don't hang on to them or notice them because they're so insignificant, because our mind is single-pointedly directed towards liberation. Yeah. Somebody call me a name. It's like, so what? Yeah. When you have in front of you everything you've done and experienced in samsara for eons, and then, your loved one walks away, or you get fired from a job that you really want, or, somebody calls you a name and talks behind your back, or, even somebody threatens you or beats you up or does something really horrible. When you have that in front of you, are you going to pay attention to this other stuff and let it wig you out? No. No. The mind is going to be incredibly peaceful. Very peaceful, because it knows this is where I'm going. Okay? When the mind was thus concentrated, now we're going into his second knowledge. When the mind was thus concentrated, purified, bright, unblemished, rid of defilement, pliant, malleable, steady, and attained to imperturbability, I directed it to the knowledge of the passing away and reappearance of beings. I saw by means of the divine eye. The divine eye is one supernormal power that you can gain through deep states of concentration, where you can see things at very, very far distances. And in this case here, you can see sentient beings dying and getting born, and, all sorts of clairvoyant knowledge comes to your mind. Okay, so by means of the divine eye, purified and surpassing the human, I saw beings passing away and reappearing, and I discerned how they are inferior and superior. So beings dying, getting reborn, how they're inferior and superior, lower realms, upper realms, beautiful and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate, in accordance with their karma. These beings who are endowed with bad conduct of body, speech, and mind, and who reviled the noble ones, meaning the Aryas, the holy beings, who reviled the noble ones, held wrong views, and undertook actions under the influence of wrong views. With the breakup of the body after death, they have reappeared in the plane of deprivation, the bad destiny, the lower realms, in hell. But these beings who were endowed with good conduct of body, speech, and mind, who did not revile the noble ones, who held right views and undertook actions under the influence of right views, with the breakup of the body after death, they have reappeared in the good destinations, in the heavenly world. In other words, they had a good rebirth. Thus, by means of the divine eye, purified and surpassing the human, I saw beings passing away and reappearing, and I discerned how they are inferior and superior, beautiful and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate, in accordance with their karma. Okay, so imagine that today you have the power, and just appearing before your mind, just take in our world all the people who are dying at this moment. There's quite a number, there's 7 billion human beings. There's people, I don't know the statistics, how many die in each second. Yeah? But imagine that you had this ability to see everybody who's dying and where they're going to get reborn. And then add to that all the animals, all the insects, all the living creatures under the ocean, all the different life forms, sentient life forms. And you could see, just like you're looking on the palm of your hand, all those beings dying and their karma ripening and throwing them into another rebirth. And so some beings going from the top of samsara into the hellish realms, other beings who were born in very much suffering, that karma being exhausted, and so them having an upper rebirth afterwards. You see people going up and down in samsara, meeting with loved ones, separating from loved ones, meeting with new loved ones, separating from those loved ones, being successful in their career and dying, and being successful in another career and dying. And, having all different sorts of status, all different sorts of degrees of health, experiencing utmost pleasure and the worst of pain. And you saw all of this, other beings experiencing this. How do you think you'd feel?
Appalled.
Compassion.
Horrified.
Horrified, appalled, compassionate. What else? Yeah. It would be so horrifying that the only way you could react would be with compassion. There wouldn't, even if you saw your worst enemy dying and getting reborn, could you still continue to hate that person? Yeah. You saw them going through the pain of death. in the intermediate state and getting reborn in some horrible rebirth, could you still hate them? I don't think so. Yeah. So very strong experience of compassion. Yeah. So, and that compassion then leading to the bodhicitta. Yeah. Because you know that all these sentient beings are going through all that experience due to ignorance. And that ignorance doesn't have to be there, that ignorance can be eliminated. And how is their ignorance going to be eliminated? They need to be guided. They need to be taught. When I'm ignorant myself, how can I help anybody else? I can't. Therefore, I have to completely actualize the path in my own mind to benefit all these beings. Okay, so very strong bodhicitta comes in the mind. It can be very good in your meditation. Imagine these different experiences that the Buddha had. You know, the armies and the dancing girls and the recollecting past lives and the seeing sentient beings. You know, go through each one and really imagine having that experience and how you would feel. Okay, so this was the second knowledge I attained in the second watch of the night. Ignorance was destroyed, knowledge arose, darkness was destroyed, light arose, as happens in one who is heedful, ardent, and resolute. But the pleasant feeling that arose in this way did not invade my mind or remain. Why do you think he had a pleasant feeling?
He thought that he could help them?
Yeah, because in spite of this horror, he saw that there's something to do about it. Okay, then the third knowledge. When the mind was thus concentrated, purified, bright, unblemished, rid of defilements, pliant, malleable, steady, and attained to imperturbability, I directed it to the knowledge of the ending of mental pollutions or pollutants. I discerned as it had come to be. This is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering. This is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Okay. These are the pollutions or defilements. We'd say defilements. These are the defilements. This is the origin of the defilements. This is the cessation of defilements. This is the path leading to the cessation of the defilements. My heart, thus knowing, thus seeing, was released from the defilements of sensuality, released from the defilements of becoming, released from the defilement of ignorance. With the release, there was the knowledge, released. I discerned that birth is ended, the holy life fulfilled, the task done. There is nothing further for this world. Okay, so he realized the Four Noble Truths. He saw clearly suffering, its origin, the cessation, and the path. And he also saw not only these things, in a regular description, conventional level, but he saw that each one of them was empty of inherent existence. So the emptiness of all true sufferings, the emptiness of all the causes, the origins, the emptiness of the cessation, the emptiness of the path. So he saw the ultimate nature, clean and pure, of all these things. Okay. And in doing so, then he realized that he had freed his mind from the pollution of sensuality, of grasping to sense pleasure, the pollution of When it says becoming, it means grasping at any existence and cyclic existence whatsoever, upper realm, lower realm, it doesn't matter, but any clinging, grasping to rebirth and cyclic existence. And the pollution of ignorance, the ignorance which is the root of cyclic existence. So he saw that by seeing the emptiness of the Four Noble Truths, that all the pollutions in his mind had been completely eliminated. And so when he says birth is ended, it means birth and cyclic existence is ended. There's no cause for it to happen anymore because the afflictions have been eliminated. The holy life fulfilled, in other words, the reason that he set out on the path that he had ordained has been completed. And the task of done, meaning the task of liberating himself, that has been done. And there's nothing further in this world, meaning he would not be reborn in samsara. Okay. However, the Buddha, out of compassion, although not taking rebirth in samsara, makes many, many emanations and sends those emanations out to all the different realms to benefit the sentient beings in whichever way they are open and receptive to being benefited. Okay, so having attained enlightenment, the Buddha doesn't just hang around in a state of boredom, okay, but spontaneously, without having to generate a motivation or a lot of effort, just whenever there's the possibility to meet the needs and lead somebody along the path, then the Buddha sends out an emanation body of one form or another, and that whatever appearance it is functions to lead that being along the path. Okay. So how do you think you'd feel if you had that experience?
Content.
Content, pretty wonderful, huh?
What I like about thinking of that is that fearlessness, like this, it's all gone.
Yeah.
Just there and be there for what we need to do.
Yeah.
That is,
Without any exertion on your own part, it's not like, oh, that person needs something. I would really like to relax. I don't feel like doing this now. There's not that happening, you know? So he says, this was the third knowledge attained in the third watch of the night. Ignorance was destroyed, knowledge arose. Darkness was destroyed, light arose, as happens in one who is heedful, ardent, and resolute. But the pleasant feeling that arose in this way did not invade my mind or remain. Beautiful, isn't it? Questions or comments? Yeah.
I read part where it says that the feeling did not remain. Does that mean that he wasn't attached to that accomplishment, or he wasn't attached to that sensation, he just moved on?
Yeah.
So the realization of the Four Noble Truths is the last thing to be realized?
Well, that's what you're meditating on all along. You know, according to the sutra path, you're meditating on the Four Noble Truths, but specifically the emptiness of the Four Noble Truths. Okay? Because we want to see that all phenomena are empty of true existence. Shall we dedicate? In the Tantra path, it's a little bit different. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May the born have no decline, but increase forever.